If you've ever sat back and watched everyone around you effortlessly hitting life's big milestones, picking careers, building relationships, moving forward with this crazy, easy confidence, while you felt, well, completely out of sync, this is going to fundamentally change how you see yourself. Today, we're unpacking Carl Jung's absolutely fascinating psychology behind succeeding late in life.
I am not behind. I am just not ready yet. You might actually have a quiet, persistent little voice inside your head repeating this exact phrase, especially while you watch years pass and your peers rack up all those traditional markers of a quote-unquote well-built life. Well, the legendary psychologist Carl Jung spent decades studying the human mind, and he basically proved that this little inner voice of yours, it's actually completely right. Jung observed a brilliant core difference in how people develop. Think of it as two separate tracks. First, there's the fast path. Most people build their identity the fast way, simply absorbing the world around them, copying societal values and timelines. Sure, it produces early confidence, but it almost always results in shallow foundations. But then, there's the rare path. Some personalities are literally built for depth. They question their identity, taking the time to build massive structural foundations. They prioritize depth over speed every single time. Jung actually had a name for this rare, incredibly powerful path. He called it individuation. It's a process of psychological development where an individual's life doesn't just unfold in straight, predictable little lines. Instead, it spirals inward to build deep structure before it ever expands outward. In this explainer, we're going to explore why feeling so painfully out of sync with society actually means you're arriving more fully and way more authentically to your own life. So let's map out the psychological journey we're going over today. We're taking what society so often mislabels as a failure to launch and completely reframing it as a deeply profound, necessary developmental step. We'll trace this all the way from a vivid inner world in your youth, through a period of incubation and loneliness, all the way to a powerful emergence of coherence in your mid-30s. Let's break these down one by one. Stage 1, a vivid inner world, or the illusion of being late. This crucial point starts right back in your youth. Jung described this personality type as having a highly active unconscious. We're talking intense thoughts, vivid emotions, complex symbols, and these really deep intuitions all colliding in your head at once. When your inner world is that loud, early adaptation to society becomes almost impossible. It's not that you're just being rebellious, it's that something deep inside you completely refuses false alignment. Becoming what everyone else needs you to be would literally mean abandoning a core part of yourself. Jung had a huge warning about this. He said, forcing such a person into a premature identity does not produce success, it produces fracture. Think about that. A life lived in the wrong shape eventually just cracks at the seams. So you know that early hesitation you had to pick a definitive career path or lock down a lifelong relationship? That wasn't a weakness, and it wasn't confusion. It was your psyche actively protecting a self that was still forming. Moving on to stage 2, incubation disguised as stagnation, which is all about the painful contrast of the 20s. Your 20s. This is usually the decade where the difference between you and your advancing peers becomes, frankly, incredibly painful to watch. But here's the secret. While others were busy building social structures, you were building psychological structure. Your peers were getting promotions and building all this visible momentum, while you might have felt completely stuck in the mud. But what looked from the outside like a total failure to launch was actually vital incubation. Your psyche was doing massive, invisible, heavy lifting behind the scenes. You were actually unconsciously grappling with massive questions. Questions like, who am I really? And what part of my beliefs are genuinely mine? See, most people on that fast path, they don't face these deep structural questions until a midlife crisis hits them like a ton of bricks, right when they realize their early success feels totally hollow. But by facing this wandering phase early on, you're saving yourself from building your entire life on a borrowed foundation. Stage 3, the burden of consciousness, seeing through the illusions. From very early on, you probably saw the things you weren't supposed to see. The social games, the gap between what people said and what they actually meant, the emptiness inside the things everyone else was so desperately chasing. Jung called this the burden of consciousness. It's this phenomenon where having greater awareness actually leads to greater suffering, simply because you see right through the illusions that others rely on to function day to day. And because you just couldn't fake enthusiasm for a game you didn't believe in, you likely withdrew. Unfortunately, society often mistakenly labels this psychological withdrawal as passivity or just a lack of ambition. The core psychological mechanic at play here is absolutely fascinating. The psyche will actually sabotage external success if it threatens your inner integrity. Realizing this changes the whole game. It means your soul was never broken. You weren't inherently flawed, or lazy, or lost. You were just refusing to cooperate with a life that wasn't true to you. I really want you to hear this loud and clear. Stop. You are not behind. You are simply on a different schedule. If you spent years feeling out of sync, it's just because the timeline society gave you wasn't built for you. It was built for people who absorb the world rather than question it. That schedule that feels like failure from the outside, it is actually the exact one leading you straight to true authenticity. Which brings us to stage 4, loneliness as a developmental stage, or the peak of isolation. As you move into your late 20s and early 30s, you hit a really critical crossroads of intense structural loneliness. Jung warned that a lot of rare personalities actually break here by surrendering. They just numb out and conform to get that quick relief of fitting in. But doing that creates a lifelong, bitter shadow of resentment. However, for those enduring the loneliness without surrendering, a shift happens. They stop racing foreign timelines. They start listening inward. And this is exactly where real permanent formation begins. And finally, stage 5, the quiet emergence, the big shift in the mid-30s. This leads us to the incredible payoff. Somewhere, very often in your mid-30s, a massive internal shift finally occurs. That constant buzzing anxiety settles down, and you naturally move through 3 distinct steps. First, you completely stop racing foreign timelines. Second, you really start to listen to your inward voice. And third, you finally inhabit exactly who you are. Self-trust steps in and completely replaces that endless, exhausting comparison. What brilliantly emerges from this is what we can call an unborrowed identity. It's characterized by real weight, stability, deep groundedness, and this rock-solid inner coherence. Because your identity was built through years of really difficult, unseen internal labor, it carries a heavy, undeniable presence. It's the kind of quiet coherence that can literally reorganize the energy in a room without you even having to try. Success from this path does not rot from the inside. Think about it. The early success of the fast path so often ends in a midlife collapse because it's built on a totally shaky foundation. But when your late success finally arrives, it expresses the real you rather than consuming you. It proves that all those years of wandering were actually deep, necessary preparation. You finally get to feel that your life belongs completely to you. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Which part of this explainer felt like something you've been living without really having the words for? I highly encourage you to reflect on that and share your answer below, because discovering that your unique path has a deep psychological purpose, that completely transforms feeling lost into having a powerful, clear direction. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep building that unborrowed identity, and I'll catch you in the next one.